And we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. This is Sam Albrecht. I'm the Director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight. We're here with the Technical Advisory Committee meeting. We're going to get started on our first meeting for some new rulemaking. Here's the agenda for the meeting. We're going to quickly go through the introductions, guide, and scope. Then we're going to bypass executive session in case some other folks join up. And then we'll go to an update from Building Codes and Standards, which I will give, and Donnie will back me up if I missed anything. We'll then talk about the current rules, see what's been working, what hasn't. Then we'll talk about rule updates in 3 different areas: codes, fees, and technical corrections. And then we'll wrap up. So let's jump to introductions. Today you've got myself and Donnie. Everybody I think knows Donnie on this call. We'll go to TAC members. We have a couple new TAC members, and I would like them to take and we'll just go through the list and let everybody introduce themselves. Did we? Oh, we've still got the same number of people. Let me. There we go. So let's we'll just go around I'm sorry.
Sam, just a technical question. Like, can we even have a meeting if we don't have a quorum, or is it you have to have 10 to do quorum?
You can. We're not stuck on that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. Good question though, Nate. So let's just start with you, Nate. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Nate Peterson. I own a modular dealership in Evergreen, Colorado. Been in the modular industry a long time. Also an installer. I have no idea which role I'm filling on the TAC committee this year. It seems to jump around, but whether it be dealer, installer, that's usually the role I fill.
Great. Mike Morrow, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mike Morrow. I'm with Bonnevilla Chief Industries based in Nebraska, and we are a manufacturer of single-family modular homes.
Thank you. Tim Pate?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Pate. I'm the Chief Building Official with the City and County of Broomfield, and I've been fortunate to have helped out on the TAC for I don't know how many years, but a lot of years, and it's been a lot of fun. So welcome. It's good to see the people still on, and welcome to the new people. Thanks.
Great. James McLean?
How's everybody doing? My name is James McLean. I'm the Field Operations Manager for Arapahoe County Building Department.
Thank you. Justin?
Justin Flucky, structural engineer. I think this is my 4th year on the TAC.
Nice. And Sumit?
Morning, everyone. This is Sumit Suntankar. I'm the Custom Instrumentation Services Corporation. We build small manufacturing shelters for power plants. We monitor environmental emissions. I've been on the committee for at least over a year now, so I've got to be on board.
And Zoom user, is that you, Dean? Are you still on?
Yeah, I sure am. I don't know what I'm coming up as.
And we appreciate you calling us from the conference floor in Las Vegas.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'm just glad I could fit it in here. So yeah, Dean Dalvitt, founding principal of EV Studio. We are specialists in architecture and engineering for all things in the offsite industry.
And Dean is stepping into the architect role that it's for the TAC. Tawny, you want to introduce yourself? You're not on the TAC, but you are a valuable member of the community.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you everybody for allowing me to join in. I'm Tawny Payton with the Rocky Mountain Home Association. We represent the manufactured and modular home industry.
Thanks, Tawny. So just as you know, I keep this guidelines and overview and scope in there primarily for the public, but since we're kicking this off again, I thought it would be worthwhile to go through this. We do always give priority to TAC members during discussions. guests are welcome to raise their hands. We'll allow all the people that have joined to talk, TAC members to talk when we do we have more public. We try to limit that a little bit. There's a lot of times, my stakeholder list is 1,300 people now. And we do make this a publicly noticed meeting. We're not sure who will show up. I don't ask for RSVPs before it comes, but as we get down into it, I can expect in the next few meetings that we might have members of the public. So we will try to emphasize to them that we are only talking about our controlling statute, and we're only talking about our administrative rules. What's being done in other states can have a perspective on it if it comes in the form of changes to our rule statute. We won't talk a lot about statute here, but I would like to, I'll try to give a brief update on what I see coming in out of legislative session right now. Tawny, you can certainly help me on that, and anybody else that's watching some of that. We're only addressing Colorado law and Colorado rules, and then to keep us moving. And I think we got plenty of time today, but if we start getting into a lot of nitty gritty on rules and codes, then we're going to have to think about having the questions and comments come in the form of that we can easily adopt into the rules. We're going to skip the open meetings piece of this right now. So we'll talk about building the updates. I did say we had a couple new TAC members. One was Dean, who introduced himself. The other is Charlie Chupp out of Fading West. He took one of the manufacturer's positions. That might be Mark Lindsay trying to get in, but he shouldn't have any problems. And so that's the only two changes I've got right now to the TAC committee, Technical Advisory Committee. And we'll talk a little bit now about staff. So we have more staff now. We have hired another inspector, on the ground inspector. So that brings us up to 4 there. And so that's going to increase our capacity. We've also hired another full-time plan reviewer. So now we have Greg and James Trout. He's used to be a county building official, and he was doing some part-time work for us, and then we brought him on as full-time staff. And so we've got increased capacity there. We have some authorization for some other positions, but some of those are tiny home based positions and funded by tiny home revenue. So we're a little hesitant to fill those right now until we get some manufacturers producing some tiny homes, because we won't be able to pay them. Our program, we budget based on what we take in, and that tiny home bill had a certain amount of projected revenue. And we'll talk about, and we've kind of bumped into tiny homes right now. So with the staffing and with the situation of tiny homes, we have no manufacturers registered for tiny homes right now. I got off a call with an individual that wants to build a tiny home in Georgia and bring it out here. I've spent 2 phone calls with him, about 15 minutes each, trying to guide him through. But we'll have to, we just haven't had anybody say, yeah, I want to produce tiny homes for Colorado and go through that. So we are continue to take phone calls and reaching out to the public and everything from the VA support groups to individuals to Habitat for Humanity to school districts that are looking for workforce housing to look at tiny homes. But we just have not had anybody go through the program. We've got the insignias ready and we're ready to go, but it's just not happened. Johnny, anything you want to throw in on staffing or tiny homes?
No, the only thing I would add is just with the tiny home interest, we do have schools that are interested in doing it. We had one that was down south that's possibly wanting to get into the tiny home industry. And then we also have, is it CSU?
Yeah, CSU.
Yeah, that's interested in building tiny homes. So there is the interest. It's just that nobody's followed through with the entire registration and plan submittal process for them yet.
Donnie, you're talking about like schools that are their shop class is going to build a tiny home,
Yeah, just like the Habitat.
like they
for
build the
Humanity.
mods now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great. I can see that being a little bit more manageable for them.
Yeah, it's easier for them to do it in a school, in an old school gym or someplace like that,
Mhm.
you know, to make it work. And we've seen tiny houses built that way too, the modular side of that, where they and then they put it on a flatbed and take it out to the location. But we do work with those. The CSU model is interesting because they everything from design and architect and everything else they put into this program, but they only build one a year, you know. So that's what we're kind of seeing is the ones and twos and not a production line that's really producing those things. We continue to reach out. You know, one of the follows up I did was talk to some of the industry folks on why it, and Tracy was actually signed up to come. I was going to ask her to give an update from her perspective. Is that the industry may be a little overwhelmed by having to come up with a QA manual and do the offsite inspections. Yep, Tim, we can get you the link for that. I don't have it real handy. I think we've just been talking to them by email. We'll get you an email address up there. I was hoping they'd pull it out to CCICC. It's almost ready to pull out, but I'm not sure we ever closed the loop with that. So the industry itself seems to be very happy with continuing to build RVs. Tiny home RVs and not tiny home state certified tiny homes. So that's kind of where we are on that. Any questions from the group? Discussion? You guys hearing anything out there I'm not hearing? Okay.
So Sam,
Yep.
I sent you and Donnie that I'm interested watching that new standard that's being developed. There's a lot of controversy apparently. Don't know if you guys are following that or not.
Only tangentially, Tim. I was aware of some conflict between the two groups that are trying to work together on a standard. I'm not sure I'm going to get too involved into it and let them work it out.
No, I agree. And I just don't know as that new tiny home standard makes it through the process and gets approved by the ICC board, how that may come into play. But of course, we don't know that because it'll probably take another couple of years to see that.
We have the ability, and it's actually tied to this Rule 215 that I'm going to talk about real quick, to adopt other equivalent codes. And so we could do something like that. We just don't have a draft or a final to look at. So as some of you know, well, as everybody here should know, we did an emergency rule to allow the city and county of Denver, who had declared a state of emergency, to provide sleeping units that were slight modifications to our code because they were designed for a building type that we didn't have in our codes, and that was an RX building code for these sleeping units. That's part of the Denver Mayor's initiative to house 1,000 people. So these are going into a community settings with, I think there's 20 or 30 or up to 60 in one with a couple of community buildings that are also modular. So we passed an emergency rule on it, and then we had some TAC meetings to work out the final ruling. So this is the rule that the final rule that we came up with. It'll be, when I get a chance, we'll get it. It's not final. The emergency hearing went fine, and then we had two TAC meetings on it, and then we had a State Housing Board meeting on it on the 13th of February, I believe, where they approved it. So now we're waiting on the Attorney General's opinion, and then it'll be published as a final rule in March. And this is in your slide deck, so you've got a copy of it. Any questions on that new permanent rule? This is what that insignia will look like. We're going to call them emergency response units. And Tim, you guys were looking at something similar up there. What's your status?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Was that to me?
Yeah, Tim, you guys were looking at some type of accommodation for sleeping units, I think, into your program.
No, I was just doing enough research to let my city management and attorney's office know as this rule went through, so that there may be some movement on this in the next year or two, but I haven't seen anything concrete. But if there is, I'd be definitely in touch with your team. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So what this does in my simple language is that this allows factory built manufacturers provide units in case of a locally declared emergency, whether it be fire, flood, homeless initiatives, that type of thing. And then we work to make sure that the units can be built offsite and brought in and placed into the situation. And so it allows an alternative to the pallet shelters that are popping up and some of the other type of emergency sleeping shelters, but it does allow the factory built manufacturers a seat at the table if they want to bid on these projects. Hi, Mo.
Good morning.
Mo, we didn't have enough for the executive session, so if we have more people by the end, we'll get back on and do that.
Sounds good. I didn't want to catch the executive session. I actually wanted to catch this session.
Okay, good.
So I appreciate the late notice, Sam.
Sorry, I was bouncing between two meetings, so.
Good to see you all. Continue, please. Thanks.
So now we're going to talk about the current rules. As you know, they become effective 7/1 of 23. We also have had a new state adopted electrical code effective 8/1 of 23. And then anything else that you guys want to comment in the current set of rules that is working or not working real well, we'd like to hear from you guys now. Or if you have any questions about that new electrical code, let us know. Donnie, I think we're starting to see the plans come in with the new updated electrical code.
Yes, we are. I think one of the things that came up the most was the new receptacle requirements for kitchen islands and plateaus. I'm not sure how many manufacturers are running into issues with trying to figure out that interpretation, but we've had one reach out to us so far.
Yeah, I think that was us, right? We were trying to wade through that because we're dealing with that in other places, so.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's coming up was I believe it's the GFI protection in the kitchens on all receptacles. That was another change. And I think we got that sorted out. I think it was something else with how the receptacle was being installed and what was causing the issues. But yeah, they kind of just trickle in, not that often, but I'm sure we'll see more as time goes on.
I think the 2021 and what we're being, at least on our end, what we're being told about the 2024, what, like some of the future stuff, it sounds like, GFIing on some of the appliances where we're running into an issue with GFI requirements, like we had with air conditioners, at least regionally for us, we're running into where these codes are getting adopted and then certain parts of it are being amended back out temporarily because some of this stuff has gotten out in front of the appliance or the equipment manufacturer's ability to have, appliances that respond properly to GFI protection.
Okay, good to know, Mike. Anybody else have any comments on the current administrative rules? Okay. So now we're talking about rule updates. As I mentioned that in one of my earlier emails, this is going to be we're going to have 6 to 8 upcoming TAC meetings, and I'll share the TAC the schedule in order to make these effective. Our target effective date is November 1st for a January 1 implementation. So the question we want to talk about today is discussion on moving so our statute requires us to be on the 2021 IECC by January 1st of 25, right? So the question is, do we need to move all the codes to 21, or do we want to move it to 24 and be out in front of everything? The 24 code set, Mike, like you said, is coming out soon or is out there already. We would need to do a pretty good crosswalk to see what that would look like if we want to go to 21 or 24. I've asked my team to start taking a look at that. I know that they're going through the 21 code set right now. And then as 24 becomes available, they'll start taking a look at that. We're also talking about adopting the two ICC MBI standards.
Sam, sorry, I got my hand up. Do you mind if I talk about
No,
the
go
energy
ahead,
code
Mo.
before you transition to the model code? So this is, and Tim Pate's intimately familiar with this since he serves on the Energy Code Board as well. This is an important requirement that was put forward through House Bill 22-1362. So this is a bill from 2 legislative sessions ago. And as Sam pointed out, it amended our law to require that we transition to the 2021 IECC by January 1st of next year. So not too far along, but it's actually more than just that. It also requires that we adopt the Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready code that was adopted by the Energy Code Board, the group that Tim was part of, but it was 21 members. Tim was not the decision maker in all of this. And they adopted that on June 1st of 2023. So it's 2 parts to this, not just the 2021 Energy Code or the 2021 IECC, but also this Model Electric Ready, Solar Ready code that was adopted by the Energy Code Board. So I'm going to drop some links in the chat here, and bear with me while I find them on my numerous open tabs. One is going to be the link to the law that I'm referring to. scroll down to page 26 and at the bottom, you'll see the specific part that we're talking about. And then if you scroll further down to the top of page 27, you'll see the next section I'm about to talk about. So let me just do that real quick. I'm going to put that in the chat. So here's the law. And then if you want to see the model electric ready code and solar ready code, here's a link to that and all the literature that came out with that. And then last but not least, as far as a link is concerned, if you want to actually visit the Colorado Energy Office website, I can't talk today, for more information about all of this, here's that link. All right. So the other part I mentioned, teased, is on the top of page 27 in the first link I sent you. So this is work that's actually starting next week. And after you get done with this first round of adopting the 2021 IECC and the model electric ready and solar ready code by January 1st of 2025, what is happening right now, or is about to start next week, is the next chapter of what the Energy Code Board is charged with. And so you got some time for this one, but by January 1st of 2030, we're going to have to adopt and enforce an energy code that achieves equivalent or better energy and carbon emissions performance than the model low energy and carbon code, adopted by, once again, the Energy Code Board. And they're going to have to do that by June 1st, of 2025. So once that is out, we'll make sure to share that with you guys, and then we can discuss next steps. But of course, you have until January 1st of 2030 to adopt that. As part of that discussion, though, the Energy Code Board will be discussing utilizing either the 2024 IECC or the 2021 IECC, and we'll have to do a comparison of the two to see which one is more effective and energy efficient. They're waiting for the 2024 IECC to come out to do that. So more to follow on that. We'll be following that closely. I'll report periodically about that work, so you guys are updated. And of course, Tim himself is going to be part of that group and can report as well. So keep an eye out for that. And then last but not least, the law does make clear, if you look on page 27, that you guys can amend these energy codes as long as they do not decrease the effectiveness or energy efficiency of them. So something to keep in mind. Yes, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. And as Mo mentioned, I've been fortunate to have served on the State Energy Code Board, and now on the phase 2 part coming up. We got our first meeting next Monday. I thought we were going to be less aggressive, but we've got 2 meetings a month until next January. So now between that and the TAC meetings, it's fun. But what I wanted to just mention is that Broomfield, City and County of Broomfield, we adopted we call it the Broomfield Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code, that went into effect this past January 1st for all new construction and additions and remodels, things like that for residential and commercial. In the Front Range here, we are the first to have done that. There are a couple of smaller jurisdictions up in the mountains that have also adopted it, but not with our permit activity that we have. I understand that City Westminster is moving forward with that probably next month. But the reason I bring that up is myself and my staff are now going through residential and commercial reviews with the Broomfield Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code, which also includes EV Ready. So as we move forward through the process, I'm not going to say I know everything about the code, I was part of 21 people who helped write it, but I'm also going through the struggles with now how to enforce it. So I think hopefully I'll be able to bring some pretty valuable background as this group moves forward. And we did one minor, like an amendment to make it more restrictive. We amended out the, if you read through the state code, we amended out the ability to ask for a waiver based on the construction cost. We only left the one request for waivers for like a natural disaster. So we called that a strengthening amendment when I took it to council last fall. Thanks.
Good stuff, Tim. Thanks for that background. It's helpful from a local jurisdiction's perspective. As I mentioned, there's 21 members on that board. As you can imagine, there's a variety of varying opinions. Tim did a good job of providing his input. But at the end of the day, majority rules, and this is what the product is for Colorado for now. I suspect in the near future that model electric ready and solar ready will be revisited as well. But for now, the next chapter is this low carbon code that we're transitioning to and working on getting that out. I also serve on it when asked to. Really, it's our executive director for DOLA, who's now Maria DeCambra. It used to be Rick Garcia. I serve as their delegate if they cannot make that meeting. So on occasion, I join Tim, but mostly it's Tim and a lot of other folks that are really engaged in the energy code involved in these discussions, and they are robust discussions. Rural communities are represented, urban communities, both city, municipalities, and counties, and of course, a variety of folks that come from the energy sector who are promoting it, folks that come from the construction sector, who a lot of times are pushing back on getting too aggressive with these requirements. But at the end of the day, it is Colorado law. And so we're all working together as best as possible to implement this law effectively. As you can imagine, the governor himself is a big proponent of energy efficiency. He's also a big proponent of modular construction and wants to see Colorado leading the nation in modular construction, but don't confuse the issue of energy conservation with the success of modular. I think both are going to be intertwined in Colorado in order to be really effective, based on what our legislators charge us with, and of course, what the executive branch wants to see happen as well. So just something to think about as you guys are moving forward and discussing code changes and adopting, the 2021 slate or the 2024 slate. Any questions for me on any of this? And good to see you all, although it's a small group this time.
Mo, do you have any highlights of that solar ready and electric ready model code that you think is going to affect manufactured and modular housing?
I don't. It's a robust document. We're going to have to go through it together as a group.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll send these links out to all the TAC members, and we'll add it for discussion on the next meeting so everybody has a chance to review it. Donnie and I'll go through it too, and we'll get some points ready to go on that. Tony,
good idea. And one more thing, there's also an ADU bill that's going to be actually introduced in committee this afternoon, I think.
Yep.
So that's going to be one to follow as well. I think there's going to be some modifications to it, specifically addressing modular that will impact your work as well in a good way. So keep an eye out for that. And I think from a legislative front, that's all I've got for you guys as well. But of course, Tani is here, and Tani always has a bunch of information about legislation. Good to see you, Tani.
It's great to see you, Mo. It's been a while. Yeah, I agree. There is a lot of legislation, and actually today is a really big day in committee, both in the House and the Senate, for housing specific bills. But yes, I am signed up to amend the accessory dwelling unit bill today. There's actually two different bills, but they both have size requirements, and so that's one item that I think needs to be addressed. And I sent an email to Sam. I don't know if you've seen that, Mo, but just CCing the RMHA lobbyists, just for efficiency purposes, just, you know, if DOH has any comments on the size restrictions, and there were a couple of other things. Oh, one was to include the definition of manufactured home. I know that trying to attract a HUD code factory to Colorado has come up in conversation. And I think that if there's a way to add the manufactured home code to the list of, you know, I guess, approved structures, approved dwellings, it would be more beneficial and probably an easier lift to get that added now versus trying to get it added later. So that's something else that I added in my email to Andrew Wood, our lobbyist, and Sam. But yeah, well, two different ADU codes. One I think is more, I think it's the TOD bill, Mo, that has the ADU reference in it. So it's important that we at least address the minimum size requirements on those units to allow for any size, whether it be a, you know, a tiny home or a smaller manufactured home or modular. It's important that we're able to, you know, just be flexible with the needs of the customer.
Tim, did you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I put it back up. Thank you. I just would like to add at least my perspective of 2021 IECC versus 2024 IECC. I mean, just to kind of plant this seed for the discussion. I wish the whole TAC would be here to listen, but I'll bring it back up maybe the next meeting. Hopefully we got a full house. The 2024, as Mo said, is not quite ready. The IECC is not published yet. They just finished up. There, I believe, 9 different appeals filed to the ICC board for a number of 2024 IECC code changes that were processed and approved. Most of them were saying that IECC is way overreaching with what the minimum scope is supposed to be. I can't go into I don't have time for the details, but apparently that should be sorted out within the next several weeks. So hopefully by end of March, we may see a document come out. But with that being said, I know that we've been following this. There's a number of energy code folks with the Colorado chapter and sweep, et cetera. And as it stands, it'll be more restrictive in a lot of areas, probably more so on the commercial side than on the residential side, but it'll be more restrictive. So in other words, higher efficiency, you may call it. But I would just highly recommend, as this group, the state, just moving forward with the 21, because there are a lot of jurisdictions that have already gone to the 21. So there's some history with just being able to get that enforceable from your aspect, from the state aspect, and to wait on the 24 until it is published. And then the appropriate people are able to do some good cost-effective analysis like we've done on the 21. I mean, I had to take a bunch of that information just to my council when I went to the 21 last year. So that would just be my highly recommended move, to wait on the 24 until maybe a year from now.
Thanks, Tim. Tony, no, Nate, you were next. Sorry.
I had 2 questions. One was on the ADU bill that's going to have some modular stuff in it. Is there an opportunity to complete, you know, 2 items are on my radar. One is possibly removing some of that factory bonding language that we wanted to get out that, you know, we probably should have never stuck in. And then is there any opportunity or desire to look at adding the third-party plan approval that the statute doesn't currently allow?
It's not our bill.
I know that.
So
I
you
know
have
that.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, so somebody would have to approach the sponsors of that bill.
Tony, is that on your radar, those 2 items, or could you?
I can definitely add those to the list today. You know, because even though there's committee hearing today, and, you know, part of it is just that it has to fit within the definition of the bill, kind of the title of the bill, it has to fit. But I can ask, if I get any responses, I'm looking at my other computer here. If I get any responses from Mo or Sam or anybody about that bill, regardless, I'll make sure that I add that to the list for our lobbyists to discuss with the bill sponsor. If it's a committee hearing that's being held today, it couldn't be added, but we could look to add something on the floor, an amendment on the floor, which isn't difficult to do, but that way the bill doesn't have to come back to the House if it goes to the Senate or vice versa, if we can amend it on the floor.
Mo?
Yeah, you would be restricted by the confinement of the bill itself, which is ADUs. So it's not modular broadly. That would be the catch.
It's not broad enough, you don't think, to catch it?
I don't
Okay.
think it's broad enough, would be my opinion.
Okay.
But it's worth a discussion. But it's very specific to ADUs, and therefore any
Okay.
change you made would be just impacting ADUs only, modular
Okay.
ADUs.
Okay. And then the second item I had to ask about, and I realize it's not related to state stuff, is anybody a little bit more familiar with what happened in Aurora from a city modular resolution bill that they passed? And anybody? No?
I saw that and I read it, and I questioned the need for it because they should be allowing modular and units already.
Yeah, I don't know what it accomplished, and I just was wondering if anybody had the details of that. I wanted to look into that because Rick wrote an article in the Denver Post about how Aurora was leading the way in modular, allowing and focusing, and they created some pathway that for easier access to modular housing. And Rick actually wrote an article in Denver about how all the other cities should be looking to do the same thing, and I just wanted to make sure that we knew what it was doing, but I don't know yet.
No, Rick Garcia wrote this article?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll send it to you.
please
email it to
do,
you.
because I wasn't even aware of the article or
Yeah.
what Aurora was doing. I know there's been several projects going on in Aurora that are modular.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't
They
aware.
passed a resolution at the town council.
Yeah,
to
but
do
the
something.
resolution was like, we're passing a resolution to start the process to figure out how we can do, I mean, it seemed very vague, and I don't know. It was
Agreed.
almost like a PR piece of like, hey, we want I don't know, it was weird.
Tony, you
Yeah.
should have your hand up.
I do, and I apologize. So the other item that is important that we raised, and I'm not sure if it's in rules or law, Sam and I discussed this and I have not looked into it, is also the like bonding requirements for installers. As discussed at multiple installation trainings, our licensed installers are wanting to train their employees, but they don't want to have to get them a separate license, a separate bond, etc. They want the bond to be issued in the company's name versus the individual's name. And so, that's a question that continues to come up in my inbox. With these installers that they're established, they have a history with DOH, and they want to train their employees and develop them, but they still feel that they're training their competition, which they are, but they want the ability to cover the company in the bond and not just an individual.
That would require legislative change, though.
Is that in law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure all the, I'll go back and look at the law, but I'm pretty sure that all the requirements for an installer are specific to that person and the registration for that person. It's on an individual basis. Unlike a seller, where I believe that registration is towards a business. For some reason, the law was written for an individual for installers and could be applied to a business for sellers. but I'd be more than happy to run back through the law and double check. I'm pretty sure that's how it is, from my recollection.
Thanks, Mo. The other thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is Donnie and I attended a meeting on a statewide WUI code, Wildland Urban Interface Code. And we provided some, I'm not sure of the effective date of that, but that's another code that they're trying to make a statewide model code, I believe. Mo, do you know more about that? Donnie, do you remember the effective date on that statewide WUI code?
I can't remember what the effective date is. I know that I think that they have started the process of coming up with that code right now.
And the division has their Colorado Resiliency Office is in DOLA, and they have a seat at the table with that, so they're keeping me informed of updates on that one. All right, any other discussion on IECC or 2021 or 2024 codes?
I have something really quick. This is
Donnie.
the reason I raised my hand. I apologize. Does anyone have any cost information as far as these different codes? Tim, I guess I'm directing that question more at you, or maybe Mo, and I guess really anybody. I mean, I understand that it's in law that we have to adopt these codes and build to these codes, but is there any really good data showing what the cost impact to the home buyer is to adopt these new codes?
I'm sorry, I was just offline for a second. So you were asking about the electric ready and solar ready code in the
well, so yeah, so I'm going to say the 2021 IECC, the electric ready and the solar ready, all of it.
They all cost more.
Right.
I don't mean to be sarcastic, but the electric ready, solar ready, and EV ready will cost more. We're finding, we had some guesses last fall when I was putting my council memo together, but we're finding, at least on the residential side, some of the costs are going to be, it does require one EV installed, or I'm sorry, EV ready in each single car garage. That may not be in effect because you might typically not be doing garages like a typical site built home. You have to have solar ready, which just shows the area on the roof where you can have the solar panels. And electric ready would be, you just have to provide electrical raceway and a junction box to any location where there is a gas fired appliance. Not a lot of cost there, but there's a little bit. It's hitting the production builders more. And then you have to make sure your electrical panel is sized adequately for the additional electrical capacity for electric appliances and the solar. On the commercial side, it gets a little different, but I think probably more along the residential side. On the IECC, the 21, we did have some pretty good cost increase numbers that's, I think, Sweet put together. I've got that in a copy of a council memo that I could try to share. I'll find that and maybe send that to Sam and Donnie, but as to where that, I think that came from the code cohort group from a year ago. They worked with Lotus, I think, but I could try to get that info.
Thank you. Out of curiosity, can we use any of the IHIP money? Could we redirect that to help offset some of these costs? I mean, I know there's the what do you call that? The incentive rebate program. Could some of that be applied? And I know it's only for Colorado factories, but would there be a way to redirect some of those funds? I guess I'm looking at Mo, and I'm going to be quiet now.
I don't have an
I'm
answer.
not touching that one.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question. That's definitely a conversation worthy of having with Jack
Yes.
Tyboat with IHIP. But
That
my
makes sense,
comment
though.
was, Yeah, I mean, it's worth, I think it's worth discussing. There's also, because the Colorado Energy Office has got money that they're gonna provide, to local jurisdictions to help, with all of this. I can't remember if they have also money for, the actual construction industry. I can invite, and coordinate with Sam and invite Adam Berry from the Colorado Energy Office to really talk about, to your point, Tani, about the costs. There are cost comparisons that have been done. Of course, the big argument is always the upfront costs versus costs down the road, right? To retrofit these buildings, to be more energy efficient versus doing them up front, when they're actually being built. So there's a lot of debate about costs, even with all this literature that's out there. And I know, for example, SWEEP that was mentioned by Tim provided a cost comparison, I think, of the 2015 and the 2018 IECC back when we were talking about potentially transitioning to 2018, many, many moons ago. But we'd be happy to put all that together for you guys to review. And then also talk with Adam, is there any money out there for industry itself versus just local government, to help with this effort? And then, of course, we can always have a conversation with Jack. Sam could have a conversation with Jack. Sam serves on IHIP. You can have a conversation with Jack about potential use of those dollars or Prop 123 funds for this. I doubt Prop 123, but it's worth a discussion.
It'd just be updating the energy incentives that are already existing in the per unit incentive programs to represent something that is close to this. Yeah. There's also some federal programs for it, for the record. So
yeah, they exactly are.
Yeah.
And Colorado Energy Office did pursue some of that money, and I believe was awarded some of it. So
Yeah.
the person that really would have their finger on the pulse of that would be Adam Berry. So I'll definitely talk to him about participating at one of your future meetings to have that discussion in more depth.
Good discussion, everybody. Tracy, welcome. You had your hand up for a minute. Did you have something? Okay. So looking at the slides, the third and fourth bullet, ICC and NBI has created standards specific to modular and offsite construction. And so we're thinking about adding those as reference documents. We're doing a crosswalk right now to see how they line up with our statute and rules. And ICC actually helped us do some of that. We'll be able to have a further discussion on that at the next meeting also. Anybody real familiar with those? Want to give an update on those? Are you guys aware of these standards that are out there? Probably more to the manufacturers than others.
I've heard of them. I think the issue from what I understand, the issue is that the global sort of view of trying to have a standardized code conflicts with, there's so many places, Colorado being a prime example, where you have, home rule. I mean, you can pass every law you want, but there's just so many varying levels of jurisdictional control of this stuff that it seems very unlikely that you would be able to have a nationally standardized deal that, would work very many places just because of the diversity of jurisdictional control. That's my take on it.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Mike.
I jump in here real quick too. I've spent a lot of time with the NBI folks who have put those original. I don't really want to call them codes because I would characterize them as best practices.
They're
Industry
standards.
Best practices.
They're
Yeah,
titled
standards. I mean, like
standards.
you can't codify any of that, and I think they did a good job laying out a list of best practices. I just don't really know. I mean, in relation to what was mentioned earlier, like how does that apply to an actual adoption in a code? Because now you're going to have jurisdictions across the country, not just the state of Colorado, but everyone's going to have a different idea on how to how to apply a set of standards to meet compliance. And there is a little concern there. I mean, what I'd like to see on the design side are, actual code requirements for a floor ceiling assembly, or for a paired mate line wall assembly, or a structural connection, or things like that that are specific to offsite construction. And these are not that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you. I know Utah just adopted them, and I think Virginia has adopted them also as reference documents. Tawny? Oh, and by the way, there is a bill passing through Utah right now for a new modular program. And I've had some discussions with some of those folks about how, once it's approved, how to implement that. Tawny?
Yes, and I was just going to add that Utah is in its final phase, the final week of session. And so there is a bill going through the process that would adopt both MBI 1200 and 1205. And I would like to echo that it really is more, I've read through both of the codes, and it appears to be more of like a guidance document, almost like a model for you to create a state program. There is support in Utah to create a state program. We already here in Colorado have the state program with the insignias, the decals, etc. So there is that already in place here. For some or many on this call, you might also support the concept in the 1200 and 1205 docs that really support the third party authority and ability to do plan approvals and inspections. And I think that that's really why Utah was on MBI's radar, because there was a project going that was being constructed for Utah location, and there was no program in place. And so, it just seemed like a really great opportunity for them to promote their program. It doesn't seem super restrictive, what I've read through. Nothing really jumped out at me. Also, when I attended the meeting in the MHI meeting last week, they commented on folks, one of the Colorado factory reps testifying in front of Congress, really like promoting the idea and concept of a national modular code. So to add to what was said before, just really, creating a code at a national level, does that look like a HUD code type of a program, but for modular? I don't know, but just giving you all some ideas of what some of the conversations around the country are right now.
Thanks, Tony. I'm not sure who popped their hand first. Tracy?
It was Tracy. And then me, and then Donnie.
We can't hear you, Tracy. Hi. We still can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry about that, you guys. So I guess when you guys were bringing up, the point of doing the standards on more of a national level, like what ICC is doing with the 2018 IRC and the Appendix AQ, and also looking at the ANSI 119 standards, the whole reason why, that's happening is because exactly what you guys are saying. We still have home rule states. We still have jurisdictional control. We still have, issues across the country for where these tiny houses are going, because not everything goes to Colorado, right? And so that's why we've got to get some sort of standards. Otherwise, the same way, we would go, I can go to Teller County right now and they're going to tell me I can't have a tiny house on wheels still, right? Here in Colorado. So, the whole point of, creating these standards and making them obviously nationwide is so that way we have some more consistency. Otherwise, we continue to see the DIYs and things of that nature that hold us back from correct funding and correct labeling and considerations. So that was the whole point of why some of these groups are coming together to focus more on the national standards.
Tracy, I'd like to hear a little bit more, and if we need to take it offline, we can, on why Taylor County is saying no, because the whole reason for that tiny home law was that a state certified tiny home can go any place in the state if it's built to the right wind and snow.
I can answer that question, Sam.
It's because it's zoning, and you guys know,
Well, it's
it's
not
always
just-
going to be zoning.
It's not just zoning though. We don't have any state certified tiny homes yet, Sam.
No, I understand that.
Right? So that problem would be alleviated with a state certified tiny home. The fact that there are none is why there are still issues across our state, right? And that's the problem about the use of the term tiny home. Because really, if you're not a tiny home, you're in essence a park model or something else, even if you may have built your product more robustly. So if folks come through the statewide program as a tiny home, then jurisdictions can accept them as dwellings. Because right now, they're not in essence dwellings. That's the problem. Therein lies the rub. But anyway, the point I raised my hand for something else. But we'd love to, Tracy, talk to you more about that. That's why I reached out to you a couple months ago. We'd love to connect on that front if you have any time to chat about it. I want to talk about these model standards. Mike raised some excellent points. I still think there's some value. Obviously, we're going to have our unique law in Colorado, including being home rule, but there are also administrative rules we have that implement that law and really clarify some things in detail that are not provided in the law, right? Of course, they can't be in conflict with the law or create law. But there could be room there to better standardize some of it. And Tanya, I think, touched upon one of those things, like how to use third-party inspection agencies, et cetera, right? Obviously, the plan review, we're stuck with, and Nate pointed out earlier, we still got to change the law to allow approval by a third-party plan reviewer. But there's a lot potentially there that you could look at and try to figure out if there's room to modify the current rules to adopt some of this, if it makes sense, right? I haven't had a chance to digest it, so I don't know how effective any of that language is, but I think it's worth a conversation. And it also may inform, right, Tani and the industry on potential legislative changes, right? If it makes sense to do that down the road, just something to think about. We of course have a convoluted piece of law that's been added to and subtracted from over the years, and perhaps there's an opportunity in the near future to really revisit and resize the whole thing. But before that, there could be an opportunity to really restructure our rules so they flow better using potentially the model standards. So just something to think about.
Thank you, Mo. Donnie?
Yeah, I'm just going to back up what Mo was saying. He just says it a lot better than I do. The other thing too is if you look at the actual standards themselves, we do a lot of what they're already recommending, right? Of course, as Mo said, it's just that our rules and our statutes have different requirements, and so what we can do is just for when we have these TAC discussions, to see how we can mold that, maybe things that we're missing, and see how it best fits our program and how we can implement it with our current rules and statutes. The one thing that I did mention to their standards team, that when they're making these codes up, was offsite construction, and that's something they're not addressing specifically because they're going to leave it up to the local jurisdictions, but that's still something that we think we have a good hand on it, but it's not something that's in there, but it's still something we can do to utilize and make changes to our current rules. That's all I was going to say.
Thanks, Donnie. So yeah, that was one piece, and that, we spent a lot of time working with the manufacturers and working with the local jurisdictions on what is off-site construction by our definition for the additional things that are going to be completed on site. So some guidance in a form of a standard for that might be extremely useful, and we've relayed that back to ICC and NBI. All right. we've got about 13 minutes left on this meeting, so any other, my last, if everybody's ready to move on, off of codes and standards, there's two other areas that I think we need to look at as far as rule changes, and that's one of those is fee increases. We do expect to do a fee increase. We'll start doing, I'm sorry, Mo, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. Just wanted to point out for folks that Tim provided some links in the chat regarding cost comparisons and also Department of Energy link on costs as well regarding the energy code. So thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'm going to make a copy of these links so that we can send them out to the TAC members that are not here. So fee increases, I think, is something we've got to take a look at. We will keep them as modest as possible in order to cover our expenses, but that's the way this program works, and we'll go from there. We'll take a look at what other states are doing, and then some of the inspection costs and plan review costs as done by local jurisdictions to make sure our fees are fair and equitable. Technical corrections, those are any little typos. I noticed a comma instead of a period and some other things that can be cleaned up in the next rule set. But if you guys are having any technical corrections that you've had discussions internally on what does this mean, and we can clarify things, now's the time to start collecting those and sending them to us. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. This is what the rule schedule looks like. As you know, doing administrative rules is a very complex process. And so if you look at the bottom of that, earliest possible effective date of 11/30, the last date to file with the Secretary, and that should be Secretary of State of Colorado, is 8/31 of 2024. So we need to get all our TAC work done prior to that, if possible. So I don't have to go back into the Secretary of State's office and amend the rules and then send out notifications of new rules. So that's our target dates there that I would highlight. Everything else is just process work after 8/31 to get us to 11/30 earliest possible effective date. Mike? Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there when we're talking about fees. And I just going to point this out. Based on the current structure of plan approvals, right, in the last 2 years, we now, as an industry, we've taken your cost and we have added it because we have to do both. You have the third party and the office cost. So not that changes what you have to do. I'm just pointing out from a stakeholder perspective, we have the combination of those fees now, which we've never had before.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mike. You got your hand up again?
Sorry, that was a
Any other discussion on fees from manufacturers or installers or sellers? Okay. Any other discussion on the rule schedule? I will get all the TAC meetings on the calendar and invites so you have placeholders. Actually, I think that's the next slide. So here's the upcoming schedule. I'll make sure that you all get invites to those so you can get them on your calendars. It's not a normal 2 or 3 week schedule. It's a little more spread out, but I think we can get all that done.
I assume, Sam, you're going to have the legal executive session rescheduled for the March 12th meeting. I would encourage you to encourage all the TAC members to participate at a minimum on that March 12th meeting.
I will do that.
Good.
Because we still don't have enough here today to jump into that. We don't have enough time either. So that's really all I had. I've got some action items that I took down for myself to get you guys some information. I'll get the new schedule, a new agenda for the next meeting out there. And we will go and start going into detail on the codes and the standards. And some of the other things the state is doing, such as the solar ready, electric ready model code, potentially the wildland urban interface statewide code also. So now it's just general discussion. We did have a really nice discussion about what's pending in the state legislature and some possible changes if the opportunities pop up. But other than that ADU bill, and there, Tony mentioned there's actually 2 of them that are kind of floating around. I don't see a lot of other state initiatives that have been released to us yet, but we are. I don't know, Mo, you have a better handle on this. We see the last half of the session gets really, really busy, right? So we've still got time to see stuff pop up.
Yeah, I mean, there's interesting stuff out there. Construction's defects laws, single staircase and multifamily structures. There's a lot going on there. So it's a really important legislative session to follow from a construction developer, building perspective for sure. But the implications on a lot of them are minor at best for the modular sector, except for the ADU one, we think will become more robust. But with all of that being said, we've been talking about for several years now, and it's something I've always wanted to do with you guys and never had a chance to do. And Sam's now going to take the reins on this. There's an opportunity to discuss creating like voluntary codes for local jurisdictions, and of course, would love to hear from local jurisdiction representatives on this body. Tim and James, and looking at you two in particular about what that would look like. But basically, taking the potential for so many different wind and snow load and other climatic and geographic condition requirements, right? And distilling it to a handful that would be appropriate for the state, right? That is an opportunity here I think we should really finally tackle. And of course, it's not something we could require and impose on local jurisdictions, but I think if you guys can create it and frame it in such a way, we might be able to get several of them, hopefully the majority of them, if not all of them, to really embrace the concept and say, okay, yeah, we'll make these requirements apply for our jurisdiction versus having potentially everybody just doing their own thing, right? So just something to think about. Saw a lot of hands pop up in response to that.
You get to go first.
I think Nate was first, Mike was second, and Tim was third.
Yep, Nate.
First off, on the ADU thing, is there any language in there, opportunity to have language in there to create varying levels of a statewide approval for them? One of the things that, if manufacturers would say is, we'd love to build a couple of these for inventory if we knew that they could go anywhere in the state. Is there any language in that bill that supports that type of logic? And if not, should we consider asking for it?
I don't think it goes to the extent that you're talking about, and I'll leave it up to you guys to have that discussion as an industry. But what it's basically doing is encouraging ADUs through zoning, right? From a zoning perspective. And of course, from a modular perspective, there's nothing that prevents us from doing what I just talked about, right? But that would require local jurisdictions to voluntarily participate in lessening their unique geographic climatic condition requirements as something more doable, manageable to address what you were talking about, to help with a product that would then be more deployable, especially from a reserve standpoint, right? Instead of being so specific to a location, right? So I think we have that ability, and I think they understand that. And I think they want to see potentially how that might work out.
Yeah, and so then my second comment on that concept that Mo was talking about is, the the program today has, you know, a lot of, you know, statewide authority from a building code standpoint, from an energy code standpoint, but we're lacking that authority in the wildfire area, fire sprinkler area, and probably something else that I'm forgetting about. And the thing that we've been talking about from an industry standpoint is, I'll be honest, possibly pulling back those two items from the locals, but not that we're not going to give them options, but trying to standardize what those options are. And so from a wildland standpoint, you might have 3 different, you know, assemblies that are acceptable for various, you know, wildfire zones. I don't know a lot about WUI. I know Tim knows a ton about that. But from a fire sprinkler standpoint, that we have 2 or 3 different fire sprinkler options with, you know, kind of the local type amendments where we're not dealing with 300 different local amendments that the factories have to comply with going into a sprinkler system process. And so it's one of the things that we're considering from an industry is kind of a pretty large rewrite of our statute that kind of starts to, it brings it all in-house within the state, but it gives options to the locals. But what it doesn't give is the ability for locals to write whatever they want, which is what they have on certain levels, and it creates a lot of havoc from a factory efficiency standpoint. And I think that's kind of what.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Mike and Tim, do you mind if I jump in real quick and respond to some of that? The wildfire is in the statute, just like the wind and snow load and other, you know, climatic geographic conditions. And so that would be lumped into what I just talked about earlier, creating that voluntary, you know, lessening of codes, if you will. What you're talking about would be required, right, in statute, a statutory change. But I would love to see how this voluntary process would work out, and it could potentially inform a future legislative effort that you guys are considering. Just something to think about. As far as the sprinkler system, though, unless someone can show me an outside statute, as far as I can tell, our statute does not require us to defer to locals. We did that on our own through rulemaking, and that's been on the books when these were resolutions. So I think, Nate, to your point, I think that at a minimum could for sure be revisited unless someone can show me another statute that says you have to defer to the locals. It's not in our statute.
That would be a fun place to do the bans and say, hey guys, pick. It kind of establishes a.
Correct. So something to think about. Definitely good to have conversations with Division of Fire Prevention Control as well on their certification side of things. Like, I would love to see some improvement on that side of things as well. But yeah, I think that was a self-imposed limitation through our rulemaking process. Sorry.
Good point.
So we're at time, but I want to check if you guys need to bail, you can. But Mike and Tim, we want to hear from you too. So Mike, go ahead.
I just was going to say, Sam, you and I had talked a while back about the consumer complaint component of the program, and, you know, having a limitation on timeframes. I don't know if that's a kind of like the plan approvals thing, if that's a legislative thing, but I just thought I would say that's still, I think, especially in relation to the 2017, and Mo, you mentioned a Colorado defect, you know, the laws have changed the last few years. And in my opinion, and from the opinion of lawyers we've talked to in Colorado, it's created a very, very expanded litigation market for these type of things. And anyway, it was on my mind since you and I had talked about it. I think that and the third party plan approval thing are probably the two of the more important pieces to look at if we have the opportunity to, the means and the method.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Tim?
Yeah, thanks. I know we're out of time. I think what Nate was talking about, I'm a little confused as to what, and then Mo, with just to key in on the residential fire sprinklers, in my opinion, you know, we are a home rule group here in Colorado, and my colleagues across the state, building officials, are very proud of that. And the state has, in some cases, been being pretty aggressive, in my opinion, overreaching, and trying to take stuff back to the state level. But that's a whole different discussion. But so from a fire sprinkler standpoint, you know, we put back in residential fire sprinklers with our 21 code adoption. Last year, we had amended those out. So, you know, I'm not quite sure if you're trying to go down the path. We can talk about this maybe next meeting, down the path of trying to take that authority away from the locals. I think we'd have a groundswell, but maybe I misunderstood. We can talk about that later. I do want to bring up one Senate bill that was introduced a couple of weeks back. It's Senate Bill 24092. I think everybody should look at that closely. It talks about if you're going to adopt an energy code, you have to do a whole bunch of cost analysis on first-time home buyers. I mean, there's all kinds of really typical weird legislative language that we see. And I know the CEO is opposing it. I know that most of the energy code folks in Colorado and jurisdictions that I know of. But if that were to pass, that would make a big difference to this group in terms of how we would be proposing to adopt like even the 21 energy code. So I think Mo, you're probably in on that. I know I just spoke with Adam this morning, Adam Berry, and I think they'll be CEO will be testifying against it. But I think that should be on the radar to take a look at the progress of that particular legislation. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Nate, you had a response, and then Mo.
Tim, I'm just going to touch on it real briefly. It doesn't take away the ability for the local to decide that we're going to enforce fire sprinklers in a residential single family, right? That's the big item. What it does is it says we would give you the choice if you want it implemented in your jurisdiction, but if so, then these are the code sets that we will use to install to. Whereas right now you have the ability to write in 20 different local amendments, change the pipe from plastic to, steel if you want to, and create a lot of variability in the code from a factory installation standpoint. And we would basically, the idea is to say, look, if you want them, that's fine. Can we agree that we're going to install it to this code set with these amendments if needed? And maybe even possible, provide a couple of versions of that and then present that to a jurisdiction, say, which one would you like us to do? Instead of following 320 sets of local amendments and then missing something and it causes a big problem. So that's the idea.
Thanks, Nate. Mo?
Yeah, I just want to touch upon some of that as well, Tim. Colorado is a home rule state, and we definitely appreciate and respect that. But you have to also remember the statewide program for modular has been around since the 70s, and there's a reason for it, right? It's to help standardize requirements. So it's not every jurisdiction just doing its own thing. Just the industry would not succeed in that kind of environment in a state like that, right? So there's a reason for it. So we're balancing the two things. So while you have home rule authority, there are also requirements that you have to abide by that sometimes infringe upon on that, right? Federal law, for example, a HUD code home, you can't write anything that conflicts with federal law, right? And the same thing would apply to state law that circumvents home rule in a specific area, right? Which is what the statewide modular program is. And so in going into the discussion about sprinkler systems, there are aspects of the statewide modular program in law that defers to local jurisdictions. That is not one of them, right? That is something that somebody at some point decided it would be a good idea to defer to locals, right? And it probably is to some extent, to Nate's point, but it could probably be revisited and framed in such a way where it could be, easier for the industry to comply with these requirements. So just something to think about, right? So nobody's imposing and taking away from something from you that you already have, right? It's just further refining something that you technically didn't really have until it was given to you through rulemaking, right? Unless someone can show me a statute that says otherwise. And then the energy code is a great thing to bring up, that other bill, Tim. It'd be interesting to watch that journey, but keep in mind at the end of the day, this governor has veto authority, right? So even if it makes it through the legislator, if And remember that the Colorado Energy Office used to be the governor's energy office, right? Used to be very close to the governor's office. And of course, the executive director is appointed by the governor. So just something to keep in mind. We're definitely monitoring it. But if it doesn't change in a way that makes sense to the CEO and the governor, I'm guessing, but I can't. I've been wrong before. He may veto it, and we've all seen this governor is willing to veto bills that he doesn't like.
And I would like to add to that, it's not a bipartisan bill and it's scheduled for committee hearing on Thursday. So for a variety of reasons, in my experience with this legislature, for a variety of reasons, the bill probably won't pass.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up today. We will emphasize that we need to do that executive session on March 12th, and I will give everybody back the rest of their day. Thank you so much, and I'll look for an email from me with some of these links for you guys to look at on your own time. Thank you.
Great discussion, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.